Hello and welcome to episode 30 of Some Like It Real. I'm Bryan.
And I'm Veronica.
And we're two cinephiles who love to talk movies.
We have weekly episodes discussing the newest films, creating lists and drafts, and keeping you updated on the latest movie headlines and awards races.
As a reminder, please like, rate, and subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms, which helps more people find the show.
And share it with any cinephiles in your life.
On this episode, we have the power, maybe figuratively, but maybe literally, as we review Power Ballad and Masters of the Universe.
Yes, an extremely powerful episode, especially if you consider the combined screen time of abs from both Nick Jonas and Nicholas Galitzine. I never know. Galitzine? I think that was it.
Galitzine.
Galitzine, I think. It's a long name.
Powerful stuff indeed, even though we cannot say his last name, which comes to show how powerful he is as a person, which makes perfect sense why he played one of the most powerful characters ever. So we're not going to do any news for you guys today. We're recording this episode earlier than we usually record them, so we're going to save news and trailers and weekly catch-up for the next episode. So we're going to dive straight into the reviews, starting with John Carney's Power Ballad, starring Nick Jonas and Paul Rudd. So, Veronica, what's your relationship with John Carney's movies, and how did you feel about Power Ballad walking into it as well as walking out of it?
Yeah, I hear so much just general, cinephile chatter about John Carney. I'm definitely familiar enough, but I have not really done a big dive into his filmography. No reason not. I just, never quite got to it. I know I've seen once a while ago. And yeah, I beyond that, I'm familiar-ish with the songs and stuff like that, but just not someone I'm have much experience with. So, yeah, this is sort of a first-ish for me, and I was definitely excited about it because I love Paul Rudd, and I was excited to see Nick Jonas in a, sort of meta-ish role. So, yeah, excited going into it. Definitely, Paul Rudd, I would watch, literally do anything, comedy, drama, whatever. Music now, apparently. I don't know if we've ever really heard him sing that much before. So that was exciting. And, yeah, I really like this. And I've kind of seen a general response for people who do really love John Carney that this is maybe a lesser entry, maybe some diminishing returns or something like that. But for me, who's a little less experienced with his stuff, I'm it was great. It was everything that I've heard about from John Carney fans for so long that, it's just sort of effortlessly charming. It's got a little bit of bite to it. It's not, it's not so saccharine. There's some edge there, even though it's fundamentally kind of feel good. So yeah, this worked for me for sure. And yeah, I'm excited to see why. Bryan, I know you are a pretty diehard John Carney fan, so I wonder if that hit the same for you.
Yeah, John Carney is one of my guys. Saint Street, which is not his first movie, but it's probably his most celebrated movie of his catalog thus far. That movie has a very important attachment to me, so I pretty much will follow John Carney till the end of time. And I also really do enjoy a lot of his other films. Once I think is exceptional. Begin Again is probably towards the bottom for me, but I still think is a really great entry in his catalog. And Flora's Son, which came out in 2023, was super underrated, super underseen. Not a lot of people talked about it. It got plucked from film festivals and dumped on streaming, so nobody really got the chance to talk about that. But I really like everything that he's done. So, of course, I was very excited for Power Ballad. And when you have Paul Rudd as the lead, I'm like, well, similar to you, Paul Rudd is one of those actors that I will watch in literally anything. And he could do no wrong. The fact that he could do a comedy like Anchorman and then a drama like Our Idiot Brother, and then he could play Ant-Man, and now he's doing something like this. It's really incredible how much range he has as a performer, and I really respect that about him. And Nick Jonas being New Jersey's own Nick Jonas and everything. Of course, right. Naturally, very excited to see what he does on screen as well. He's done a few acting roles, and, he hasn't wowed me in anything in particular. But I'm like, it is fascinating to see John Carney have a film where we have another musician playing a musician, very meta and everything, similar to what he did with Adam Levine and Begin Again a few years back and everything. And I will say that as someone who loves John Carney, this was a tad underwhelming for me. That being said, I still liked the movie overall. I didn't walk out of it loving it, but it's exactly what you expect from John Carney. It's a romp with so much sincerity, and it's an uplifting message at the forefront. I think Paul Rudd delivers one of his more tender turns. He's so good in this. Like, genuinely, my favorite element of the movie is him. I really enjoyed following his character. I had some issues with the writing, but I was so engrossed with him because it's Paul Rudd playing him. Some storytelling choices kept the film from really working for me, but I was charmed through and through. I was entertained enough to go, I had a really good time watching it. It's not one that I could see myself revisiting very often compared to other John Carney works, but for a guy that has only put out a small amount of films, I think he did another good job with this one. It's just not on par with the other films that he's put out, in my opinion, but I also do think that this is a very good introduction to people who may not be well-rounded with his work, and then this could hopefully entice them to go back and watch his earlier work and everything. So I liked Power Ballad. I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, so I was a little disappointed in it, but I overall thought it was a solid film.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, if I wasn't prepping for a busy Tribeca schedule, I definitely would have tried to get it, watch Sing Street or Once or something, and kind of prep for that. And I'll for sure go back to them.
Sing Street is a must watch.
I know that's
that's the
yeah,
one. Once is great as well, but Saint Street is like his magnum opus.
for sure. Yeah. So yeah, we both. I think it's safe to say we liked it and recommend it if you're curious about it. And we can get into a little bit of the spoilers, premise kind of thing of this movie. So we opened with Paul Rudd as Rick Power, and he's a wedding singer playing in a wedding band. And I liked in that opening scene we get like kind of a cool transition to him being on stage at this wedding, and then he goes into one of his own songs that he's written, and we get like this cool transition to like a concert fantasy kind of thing. So it's clear that like this guy has very unrealized dreams to be this rock star, this songwriter, all that stuff. And so I thought that was a great way to introduce him. You see him interact with the band, and they're chummy, but also they're a little bit like, yeah, this guy's always trying to pull this stuff and play his own music and things like that. So I think it establishes that pretty well. But yeah, how did you feel about Paul Rudd's character's intro here?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to a lot of the openings that we've gotten in John Carney's movies, where we follow a person who clearly has a lot of dreams and they weren't able to meet those dreams, or they're very washed up and everything. Like, I think about the opening to Begin Again, where we look at Mark Ruffalo's character in that movie and we see that he was this successful record producer and everything for years. But then as the movie opens up, we see that he's very washed out. He's pretty much at the lowest of lows, and he's not getting a chance to shine like he did years prior. And with Paul Rudd's character, Rick Power, is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
So when the movie began, I didn't realize that his name was going to be Rick Power and everything. I thought that the term power ballad came from the fact that it was like a power ballad of a song, which, I mean, it is, but I didn't realize that, his last name is Power. So that was very clever. But I do like the way that we were introduced to the character and everything. And, again, there are very few actors where it's easy to just immediately fall in love with a character. And Paul Rudd is one of those actors that you could easily fall in love with whatever character he's playing right away. So I really like the setup of it, and to see that, yeah, he clearly has a lot of talent, and he's so much better than just being a wedding singer and everything. But as the movie progresses and everything, and we'll talk about it momentarily, we see that there is so much more within him. But from this opening alone, we see that he's way more deserving of opportunities than just being some schlucky wedding singer in Ireland.
Yeah, and we get scenes with him and his wife and daughter as well. You see, like, he's this fun family man. He's like, he and his wife are like still very into each other after all these years, and I think coming from someone like Paul Rudd, who can just sell that so immediately, like you understand this guy is talented, he's charming, but it's he definitely reveals as we go along the sort of old wounds that have been festering there about feeling like he didn't make it and he should have. So yeah, that all establishes nicely. And so we see him and the band heading off to play an overnight gig at this fancy wedding. I like this sort of prep going into this, where you see them like going around the grounds and everything, and it's just like a bunch of jokes about how they're like old and they need their reading glasses for stuff, and they're like,
Yeah, that was funny.
yeah, it's charming. It's nothing revolutionary or anything, but yeah, it's just some cute old man humor. And so as they're playing this giant wedding, I think they know about it beforehand. There's like a rumor going around that the groom of the wedding is friends with this boy band heartthrob singing sensation named Danny, who is of course played by Nick Jonas. And so we get this moment when the bride and groom ask if he can join the band on stage to sing a song. And I think the band beforehand is like, oh, this is like bullshit pop music, like this guy probably sucks and all that stuff. So they're like kind of reluctantly sing with him, but then they sing the Stevie Wonder song, I think. And like Nick Jonas says Danny is he's very on the ball. He's like he knows the song, he loves the song. He's he can do the like old school stuff that the old guys like. And they have a great performance together. He and Rick. And so there are like videos of this that go viral, and they're like, this is great. This is a cool experience. Like this guy's actually pretty good. And then Rick and Danny after the wedding find each other on the grounds and get into a conversation, talking music and songwriting and stuff. And I think this is like maybe some of the highlights of the movie is their scene together, because as we'll get into, like Paul Rudd and Nick Jonas both are really good in this, but they don't have a ton of screen time together because they're sort of intentionally separated for a long stretch of the film. So I kind of thought they were really like electric together here when they're they're batting ideas back and forth. I loved the moment when Danny is explaining to Rick about writing boy band songs, and he's like, you got to keep it appropriate enough to appeal to the parents, but also like enough of a fantasy for teenage girls and stuff like that. And Paul Rudd's trying to write the next song. He's like, he just keeps being like, I want to make a baby with you, want to something on your tits and something, and he's like, nope, that's not gonna work. That was just a funny observation that probably Nick Jonas has had to deal with in real life. So yeah, how did that whole sequence work for you?
Yeah, it was really fun seeing them bounce off each other. And Paul Rudd, again, just glazing about my love for Paul Rudd. He's one of those actors that's able to bounce off any of his scene partners so seamlessly. Like, the fact that he could work off anyone flawlessly, like, I think so much about all the actors that he's had duos with these last few years. Like, immediately the one that comes to mind is the one that he just had this past year with Tim Robinson in Friendship, which is of course very different from this movie and everything, but like he just always knows how to get the best out of his scene partners. And yeah, you brought up of how Paul Rudd and Nick Jonas, they don't have a ton of sequences together in the movie. I think that the sequences when they are working off one another are among the strongest in the entire film, and it does help that like you have these two generations. You have this person who clearly made it big, who obviously made it big, and then this person who was striving to make it big, but then he had to set himself back because he went on to have a family and went on to have this career that, has provided him some stability, but it's not his dream. So this entire sequence of them bouncing off ideas and then trying to rework a song that Rick had written, and then they're throwing around ideas, and then they're drinking, they're doing drugs, they're doing all these different things. It made for a really fun moment for sure.
Yeah, it establishes. And then the morning after, the band is leaving, and Danny offers this super, rare guitar that he has. He sends someone over to give it to Rick as a gift, and Rick is just like, God, what a great kid. Like, he's just so pleasantly surprised, and just like knowing the basic premise of the movie, you're like, that's funny how we know that this is obviously gonna invert somehow. So yeah, that I do kind of feel like, as much as I love the movie, I kind of feel like that was probably the best part of it, pretty much up top. And then we know that things are going to sort of unravel from there. And so we follow them both getting back home, and Danny is talking with his agent. He's sort of doing, I don't know if it's his first solo album, or he's branching out on his own beyond his boy band group with his brothers. Wonder how they got that idea. I enjoyed a lot of
Did you like how they incorporated
the archive
that
footage? Yeah. That was so fun. That was so many like Nick Jonas pictures that were just like everywhere when we were in like middle school probably.
Yeah.
They looked so familiar. But yeah, so we get obviously they're sort of going for a fictional version of Nick Jonas's real life here, and they want something that he's been writing his own songs, but they want something that's like even more of a different direction. The agent really lays it on thick, like if you want to maintain your lifestyle, basically, if you don't want to, keep your house and your cars and like everything, like everything is kind of riding on this. So obviously the stakes are established that he's kind of has to do something desperate here. And then we see him, as he's tinkering with songs and stuff. He plays one of the songs that Rick had. That was one of Rick's songs that he had played during their jam session, and they had sort of workshopped together. He plays that, and Danny's girlfriend, played by Havana Rose Liu, who is in like one scene. I was so surprised that she didn't come back in the movie at all. Did that surprise you? Because I know we've talked about how she's like booked and busy and everywhere, but like I totally expected her to have a bigger role in this.
Listen, any inclusion of Havana Rose Liu is a win for me, but of course I would have liked to have seen more of her. And I saw this film at the Philadelphia Spring Fest, which is also where I saw Tuner. And it was just weird seeing like back to back. Like, right. Oh, here's Havana Rose in this movie where she has a relationship with someone who's affiliated with music to a degree, and now she's in a relationship with an actual musician. So it's like... It's like, oh, are you going to be in a relationship with someone who isn't a musician?
Yeah, she has a type, apparently.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's writing, like, he's, playing that song, and of course she hears it, and she's like, that's incredible. Like, that's, that's got to be your next song. And he's like, oh, okay, well. And, like, they have this moment where she's like, it's about, like, the title of the song is How to Write a Song Without You, something like that.
Yep, that's the name.
Yeah, and so... she's like, who is that about? And he's like, lies and says, oh, well, you. And from there, like, I kind of thought that was maybe going to be a bigger, like, I thought we were going to see some conflict between them where either she finds out eventually, not only that he's lying about the song, but that he didn't, write it about her, that it was this, because she thinks she finds it to be like so romantic and beautiful, and we just get this like short clip later of like in a news montage that they've split and are not part of. So I don't know. I just felt like there was like stuff left on the table there. I felt like there was a little more sort of drama or catharsis to mine there with what that did to his relationship, because from our point of view, we just, as we'll get into, the song blows up and she's just out of the picture. So yeah, I don't know. I thought that could have been a little more of an indication of how he's changing and everything like that, but maybe Havana Rose Liu was too busy.
Yeah, I would have liked a bit more with that character as well. But then it was like, oh, it's kind of refreshing to not have to deal with the love interest and everything, because I feel like that's such a common trope in a lot of these movies and everything. It's like, oh, we see the artists tackling their personal turmoils with their relationships and everything. And it's like, we have Rick dealing with his family debacle. It's like, do we really need to have another character also dealing with their relationship and everything? So I understand the yearning for wanting a bit more, and I thought the same thing too. I thought we were going to get more of her throughout the movie, but as the movie progressed, I'm like, it kind of makes sense that she vanished from the picture, but also it's like, oh, okay, that was quick, because they did a very quick time jump. They jumped ahead 6 months later after he released a song on his own, and then which kickstarted his solo career to massive success. And I love the sequence where Rick overhears the song and everything. He's just in this mall walking around and everything, and I'm like, oh, this is too funny and everything. Just him like looking around, being like, where's that coming from and everything. So yeah, Rick overhears the song and he's like, wait a minute, that's my song. Like, what is happening? So he's trying to convince everybody that it was actually his song, but he has no evidence to go off of and everything. So because of this, he is so enraged. He's like, oh, this song that I poured my heart and soul into it is now out there being performed by someone else, and he's getting all the credit for it, when yet I'm the one who should be getting the credit for it. So we see a whole bunch of events go on where he's constantly going back and forth being like, this is my song, please believe me. And they're like, where's the proof? Like, how can we believe you if there's no proof? So throughout this portion of the movie and him dealing with this fiasco and everything, one instance that happens is that he's performing at a wedding, and the bride requests for him to perform the song, and he refuses. He doesn't want to give in and perform it and everything, and he is so enraged by it. He's just like, fuck all of you, I'm quitting the band and everything.
Yeah, and as we're seeing, I think it escalated nicely. It was like, first it was just like, wow, isn't that like crazy that this guy I jammed with once like thought my song was good enough, and he's almost like a bit optimistic or like naive about it at first, where he's like, oh great, like maybe I'll call him up and see if I'm gonna get a credit on it or something, and quickly becomes obvious that that's, they're going to make it very difficult to get in touch with Danny, and so it's, he's obviously like, okay, this is was actually an intentional thing done to him, and I like that way they consult with some lawyers, and who walk it through, like, do you have any evidence of you playing the song earlier or any published anywhere? And he's like, no, I was working on it, it wasn't complete yet, so I never played it anywhere. And he has that meeting with his friend Sandy, who is in the band, and then goes on this adventure with him later. And they said, like, I think Paul Rudd says, like, what can we do legally speaking? And they're like, well, really nothing. And Sandy's like, how about illegally speaking? And just he's obviously a troublemaker here. And as that just, I think it was pretty believable how it, leads him to spiral out and spiral out. He kind of tries every measure he can think of with talking to lawyers and trying to call the agent again and again. And yeah, I bought it how he kind of unravels over this. And of course the song it's not just a song. It's like topping every single chart, and it's like completely, the music video is gone viral, and it's more than just this was published and I didn't get the credit. Like, it's this overwhelming presence in his everyday life. And so then the bride asking him to perform it at the wedding causes him to crash out. And quits the band, fires from the band, whatever it is. They've parted ways. And in that fight too, there's the other guy who has been a bit more antagonistic to him the whole time, but Sandy is his buddy who's been like trying to defend him the whole time, and he's like mean to Sandy in that fight, and he like kind of tells him to fuck off and leave him alone. And it's just a real low point, which then leads into him out with his family driving home one day, and the song comes on the radio, and his wife and his daughter are kind of teasing him about it. They're like telling him to sing along with it, and he tries to go to change the radio and gets distracted, loses control of the car. They get in a car accident. Like, it's just, obviously this is just like the absolute low for him, and he's like, I've just clearly been overtaken by this. And he had a line that I liked that I wrote down. He's like, I wrote a number one song. Like, he's like, I did it. It's not a question of like if I would have been good enough or something. Like, a song I wrote is now a success. So he says, like, I wrote a number one song, but I live in a shoebox with two women who don't believe me. And it's like, I could feel that. Like, I could understand that. It is, like I said, it is mostly like a light, frothy, zippy movie, but I was like, I could really understand the like pain here of never being sure for your whole life if you could do this thing, and now it's proven to you, but it is not working out the way that you had ever intended. So yeah, I don't know. I was sympathizing with him in this moment.
Yeah, and this moment made you realize that music for Rick is essentially like a beacon of light in very dark times and makes him feel whole. Like, yes, he has this wonderfully supportive wife and daughter and everything, but to him in that moment, he felt that wasn't enough, because he finally got to get his dream of writing the song, and it ended up topping all these charts, and he's not even getting the credit that he deserves. And, we see throughout this movie that there's ambitious dreamers with lovely voices and a way with melody, and this is very much where John Carney comes into play, because all of his movies tackle this same theme of where someone gets to do their dream and they're at such a high, and then it plummets, and then something causes a turmoil between them and the people that mean the absolute most to them, more so than their dreams, and how you realize that what should matter the most are the people in your life as opposed to just your dream. But with Rick in this scenario, he's like, I worked my ass off for so long, and I was at such a high, and then I left all that behind to do this middling career as a wedding singer, and now I finally got this wonderful opportunity, and I'm not even getting credit for it. So yeah, it taints his relationship with his family, and then that's when Sandy decides, I'm gonna help you get the credit for the song. So then they go to LA.
Their reunion is really great.
Oh, it's like so great.
They have the fight, and then they come in both. I believe the daughter texts Sandy and says, like, tell my dad I believe him, and they both just start like ugly crying, and they're like, okay, we're gonna do this together.
So they go to LA to convince Danny to acknowledge Rick's contribution to the song. They go to one of Danny's concerts, and then they're unsuccessful in getting themselves in there. which that whole sequence was really entertaining as well. Because like Rick was trying to do something, and then of course Sandy comes in and like ruins it all, as Sandy does with everything, clearly. So how did you feel about the narrative going from the Ireland stuff all the way to LA, like for essentially the entirety of the third act? How did you feel about that shift?
I liked it. Yeah, I knew obviously, however they were going to get in touch with Danny was, it was gonna strain credulity a little bit. Like, yeah, obviously, it was silly to think they could just sneak backstage or whatever. But it's that kind of movie. I'm along for the ride, and it's also like here I was noticing it's that really kind of like watchable movie. Like even just the shots of LA and just everything like that is it's like slick and well done, and maybe not the most like, again, it's not reinventing the wheel or anything, but just like a cool like go see two buddies and go to LA and try it with a mission and see how it goes well or falls apart. So yeah, I was like trying to get into the backstage was funny, and yeah, Sandy fucks up the phone call, and then they run into the bride and groom for the wedding where they originally met them, and I was like, okay, that's a convenient, decent enough like segue there. Who tells them about the after party, which is at Danny's house. So now they're like, okay, we're in. Get to the after party again. Sandy like acting like a fool in the party, which was funny. The beautiful woman flirting with him, and he like chooses to play the rare guitar instead. It was like, okay, we he's a we get who that kind of guy is, and so then yeah, Rick sort of corners Danny, and we've clearly seen from now like Danny the success has kind of gone to his head. Like we said, he for whatever reason broke up with his perfectly lovely girlfriend, and he's seems like he's been acting a bit differently since this song really went and put him in a new stratosphere. So yeah, he breaks up his hookup with two girls, and while he's upstairs in his hot tub, and this is where like Rick just gets really unhinged, and you're like, okay, he's made it, he's kind of cornered him, like how's he gonna break this to him, and he chooses to kind of lose his mind a little bit, getting in the hot tub with him while he's fully clothed and like kind of intimidating him, being like, I just need to hear you say that this was my song. Like, I'm not even asking for money or credit or I know that maybe you can't do that, but like, I just need to hear it for my own sanity, so I know I'm not crazy. And we don't quite get that. What we do get is that there's a bit of a physical struggle, and Danny falls off of the roof onto the bushes of his large house. So yeah, did this surprise you how that confrontation went?
Not really, because the thing with John Carney is that things always get very crazy in his third acts and everything. Obviously, this is probably the most like crazy that's happened in a movie, because like, yeah, we've had crazy third acts in all of his movies and everything, but not to this extent. So I wasn't entirely surprised, especially with how enraged Rick has been throughout the entirety of the movie. I'm like, okay, some altercation is going to happen, whether it's intentional or not. And clearly him falling off the was really, really funny and everything. But also,
I thought he might have died. I thought they might have been like, yeah, he died.
No, that would have been, no, as someone who's watched all John Carney's work, yeah, they would not have gone down that dark of a route. They wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I had a hunch. I'm like, you're not going to do that. That's way too graphic and everything. Even if it's played for comedic effect, there's just no way that they're going to do something like that. Because then it's like, well, what's the point now? Like,
yeah.
How do you continue the movie at that rate? But we get that whole altercation, and it's really, really funny. But then we also, in this sequence, get something really important, very crucial information of how Rick emphasizes that the song is not a love song. That was never its intention. It's a song about fatherhood. That's how Rick reeled out the song. That's why it has such a deeply personal attachment to it. And this reveal I thought was really interesting, because throughout the entirety of the movie, we don't know exactly what the intent of the song was. Like, yeah, he talks about how he would sing the song back in the day for his daughter and everything, but it's like, but what is the core theme and the core message of the song? But for him to reveal that it's about fatherhood just shows that, even though, as we've said throughout this review, Rick clearly cares about having success with his career and everything, but to him, the most important thing, the biggest success that he's ever had, was with his family. So how did you feel about this reveal?
Yeah, I think that once when they both fall off the roof essentially, and then they get into this really big, full on confrontation where I think, obviously we've talked about how Paul Rudd obviously has dramatic chops at this point, but I was impressed with Nick Jonas here too, because they both get to like dig a little deeper. And yeah, the Paul Rudd saying that, obviously the song is clearly about somebody, and how can I write songs without you? And so, I think in their first interaction with it, he says like, oh, it's about, the person I'm always writing songs about, which you just sort of assume is his wife. But yeah, the revelation that no, this is about fatherhood. This is about, he admits to Danny that when I was having a kid, I crossed my mind to leave. I was like, I don't know that I can, be tied down like this, and that I can sacrifice my career and being on the road and like trying to really make this music thing work. And, the idea that actually staying with his family is the thing that provides so much love and joy and inspiration for his music, and that he couldn't be as good of a songwriter without that sort of connection that he never knew existed before his daughter was born. Yeah, that was all like just really beautiful stuff, and well delivered from Paul Rudd.
Yeah, agreed. I'll be honest, like I thought Nick Jonas did a fine job in the movie. I wasn't really entirely impressed with his dramatic chops. I didn't hate his performance by any means, but there were certain moments in that sequence where I'm like, okay, you're trying a little too hard, buddy. Like, you're trying just a smidge hard. And the thing is, I know that acting isn't like his number one forte. Like, I know his primary thing is being a musician and everything. And sure, he's acted in some films and TV shows and everything, and he's acted on stage as well. But also, not that Paul Rudd is this acting giant. Like, he's no Daniel Day-Lewis or whatever, but like, someone who's obviously much more established as an actor compared to someone who's not as established. Like, he's obviously a well-known name, but as an actor, he still is relatively new to the space. I thought he did fine in the role. Like, I don't really think there was much acting that had to go into a role like this, quite frankly, because it's very much meta, on the nose and everything. And I'm sure like any musician could have played this role. And yes, it's perfect that Nick Jonas on paper makes sense for a role like this. But I think in terms of his acting, like he wasn't bad. Like, I didn't walk out of the movie going, wow, Nick Jonas should never act again. But I wasn't necessarily like blown away by his performance. And maybe I wasn't supposed to be. But the thing that I love about Carney is that he's able to get really good performances out of his actors. And I think back to Begin Again, where Adam Levine, who also clearly is not an actor and everything, like he's primarily a musician, he was so unbelievable in Begin Again. Like, he actually gave a really emotionally moving performance, and I was really surprised by that. Also, I think Begin Again is a better movie than this, but that's, a whole different other conversation. But yeah, Nick Jonas, I thought he did fine in the role, but this moment definitely made me go, okay. Like, I see it, but I wasn't necessarily wowed by it. But the sequence itself, the revelation about how the person that Rick was writing songs for the most was his kid, I was like, that shocked me. I didn't think that was going to be the real reason behind the song, but I thought it made sense for Rick's character, and it also gave you a sense of emotional gravitas for the character too.
Yeah, and totally a good point about Nick Jonas. And I think you're right that it's more so the idea of, someone who's more associated with music and less with acting and stuff. It's when you do get to do a big scene like that where you're, screaming and crying and everything, like some people could get really carried away with that. And I thought he handled himself well with, opposite
he didn't
a
overham it up, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
And like I've seen good performances from musician turned actors who play musicians in movies and everything. I can't think of any on the top of my head right now. Like, I think maybe my favorite of recent memory might be like Lady Gaga in The Star Is Born, which that performance definitely feels very Lady Gaga coded. But
well, you admitted you did not finish the masterpiece that was The Idol, so you did not see The Weeknd in his full glory.
Yeah, but I saw The Weeknd and Hurry Up Tomorrow, and that was enough for me.
Yeah, I didn't see that one, but yeah, The Idol that's literally one of the worst performances like I've ever seen. It's so bad.
Hurry Up Tomorrow ain't better. I can tell you that right now. But yeah, and then we get into the final moments of the movie. So how did you feel about this final segment of the movie, and kind of elaborate a little bit to the listeners what happens?
Yeah, so we get sort of a bit of montage, sort of cutting back and forth between Danny being at like, his next concert, and we get a moment that sort of calls back to a dream sequence that Rick had earlier in the movie, where he's picturing like Danny being up on stage and saying, "Hey, this next song, I actually wrote it with this guy," and like publicly giving him credit. And so yeah, in this actual scene of him at a concert, we get this moment where he stops and says like, "Oh, this song," and then he just sort of powers through and says, this song changed my life. This is, here it is, his hit song and everything. So, like, we're getting that simultaneously with, it's a little neat the way everything wraps up with Rick. Like, he sort of, as we said, when he has this confrontation, he's sort of like, I just need to hear it for myself. And, I was in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, is he going to record him admitting it or something like that? Like, and he doesn't even like in, explicit words say, yes, you're right, this was your song. But he alludes enough to it for Rick to be like, okay, thank you. That's like a weight off my chest that like I know I'm not crazy. Like there's sort of a question the whole time of like, well, we were both drinking, like maybe it was your song. But I mean, Rick never doubts that he wrote that song, obviously. So just to hear that is sort of like it sort of like cures him. He's sort of like, okay, I have my closure. I'm good with just the knowledge that I can write a hit song. And so we follow up with him, making up with his family, making up with his band members, and rejoining the band. And then we have them at another wedding scene where, again, the couple requests for Danny Wilson's hit song to be played. And at this point, he is like totally, like we said, he's got his closure. He's like totally cool with it. They're like ready to sing the song. And so we get a cut back and forth of them both singing it. There's a moment too when like we see Danny singing it, but I think we're hearing like Rick's voice coming out, which like that's a really cool, that's a good moment and stuff. And then that is also spliced in with the scene where we see his daughter coming into Rick's like working studio, going through, we've seen earlier in the movie when Rick is trying to prove that it's his song, he's like combing through file after file trying to see if he recorded it anywhere, and he didn't. And so his daughter is looking through like old photos and home videos, and of course we get a moment where she's a little kid running around, and Rick is in the background playing the piano, tinkering around with it, and playing this song from like 10-15 years ago or something. So just as we're seeing him get his closure and be fine with this, we're like, okay, we have proof now. And so this is like she's like, oh my god, mom, the video's here. And it just kind of cuts there, and then I think the only sort of like button on it we get is that we see Rick walk through to an outdoor musician, like a guy who's playing for money on the street that we've seen earlier, and he just like drops like a stack of $100 bills in his guitar case, and you're like, okay, you're just left to infer that like they found the video, they sued Danny for a lot probably, and possibly ruined or ended his career, and they worked out financially, and probably he got credit. I thought that was interesting how they don't fill in those gaps for you, or like, that could have been an extra half an hour of the movie maybe, but they're just like, you get it, and you fill it in, and you're like, he got closure, but also he kind of got everything that he wanted out of it. So yeah, how did that work for you?
I'll be honest, I was a little mixed on the way that this film wrapped up and everything. Like, yeah, it was very sweet and sincere and everything. Like with all of John Carney's movies. I mean, this movie literally follows the John Carney formula. Like, he never differs himself with any of his films, which doesn't really bother me. But the thing that I will say is that, at least with the other movies that he's made, the endings to those movies never felt rushed to me. I felt like the closure was way too quick. Like, we get the confrontation, and then what feels like 5 minutes later, the movie's over. And I'm like, okay. Like, I do agree. I liked the fact that we're not explicitly told what happens, because then it is up for you to interpret. I do agree with your theory about how they probably did sue Dan. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what route they went in. Maybe they didn't sue him, and maybe Danny just gave him a whole bunch of money and everything. As
maybe
like
they showed him the video, and they're like, we can prove it, buy us out, basically. But yeah, we don't know.
So maybe he did that to help out Danny and everything. But like, yeah, I just felt like we could have gone just a tad bit more, because when it ended, it just felt a little rushed for my liking personally. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of like the aftermath and everything. But then it's like, it would have been like a rinse and repeat of Rick trying to talk to the lawyers early on and everything. So maybe it was best that we didn't get it. I just think that for me, I would have liked just a little bit more, maybe an extra 10 minutes to see what happens and everything. But I didn't dislike the ending, but I was very like lukewarm on it compared to the rest of the movie.
I could definitely see that, yeah. And you wouldn't want to like bloat the movie or anything, but it almost felt like we were like maybe missing a beat. Like it sort of seemed like the story could have had an extra wrinkle or something
It
to it.
was
Like
only a
it's pretty simple.
98-minute movie. It
Yeah.
wasn't that long to begin with. So they definitely could have added on like an extra 10 to 15 minutes for sure to like give us a reason to like be fully like engrossed by the way it wrapped up and everything. Like, of
Hmm.
course, I'm happy for him that now he has all this money and clearly now he's hopefully more successful position with his career and everything. But it's also like I would have liked to have seen how he got to that point and everything because this is our main character, and throughout the movie we're seeing this big journey of him, meeting the singer and then telling him about his song. Then his song is a huge hit, and him trying to get back the credit for it and everything. And then it's like, oh, now we just jump ahead and he's has all this money. Like, where was everything in between? I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah, I had the same initial reaction where I was kind of like, "That's it." Like, okay, fixed himself emotionally, and then everything worked out, and I was like, okay. And then afterwards, I was like, well, like I wouldn't want them to blow up the story too much. I was like, it's a very kind of slight movie. Like, it's not really reaching for the stars or going for anything grand or thematic, but it's just like a decently well told story, and I was along for the ride of it, and even if it's not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, there's a lot of heartfelt messages throughout this movie, and then there's some nice songs throughout the movie too. The song itself was pretty solid as well, and I do think that there are moments that are going to touch people's feelings and everything, but it's also a movie that I feel personally compared to John Carney's other films. I don't really see myself going back to this very often. Like, I remember enough of it. I saw the movie almost 2 months ago and everything, but it's definitely not one that I don't think I could go back to. But it's one that I know that if I were to recommend the movie to a casual person who doesn't watch the kinds of movies that you and I watch, I could definitely see like I don't want to use the word normie. I feel like that's a diss, but like the non-avid cinephiles
Yeah, yeah.
watching the movie, I feel like they could appreciate something like this because it tugs at the heartstrings. It does what it needs to do, and like it's nothing. It's very inoffensive. There's nothing significant about it, but it's also a watchable movie. It's a watchable
Yeah.
time.
It's very serviceable, which sounds like an insult, but like if you just want something that's gonna, because I get like not annoyed sometimes, but like there are some movies that are so feel good that it's like it's so sweet it gives you a toothache. Like it's a little too over the top and it's trying to make everything happy and stuff. Like this has its moments of edge and stuff. So enough to keep you feeling like, okay, these are real people, and I can relate to it on that level. But yeah, it's not gonna challenge you. It's just gonna give you a good time for 90 minutes or so.
Yeah, it's a slam dunk as a crowd pleaser. Like, this is definitely something that is going to surprise people and make them feel good and everything. I don't expect this movie to do super well at the box office or anything because
Yeah.
Carney's movies don't usually fare very well. But I do think that with the star power of someone like Paul Rudd, it could help boost its chances and everything. But there's also so many movies out right now, like with the horror movies that are doing very well right now with Obsession and Backrooms. I think they're gonna continue doing really well this weekend, and then of course next weekend we have Disclosure Day, and then the following week we have Toy Story 5. So this movie might get buried underneath, but I could see it finding some success later on down the road on streaming and everything. But there are definitely a few things to touch upon before we wrap up our discussion on this film. I do want to go back to the performances very briefly and just like talk more about how great Paul Rudd is in this movie and just how great he is in general.
Yeah, my sort of, I don't know if it's a hot take, I guess. My opinion on this has been that he is like, I don't think he gets fully recognized this way, and I don't know if he's been fully given the opportunities to prove this. I feel like he is the next coming of Tom Hanks. Like, I feel like he could totally, if the movie industry were different and if he'd had the sort of opportunities, like I feel like he could totally slot into that where you just like, master of comedy. Like Tom Hanks definitely has done way more drama and proving his chops that way and everything, but he just has that exact same like everyman, affable quality. You can buy him playing, a little bit more of an asshole or something, or someone who's a bit more complicated, but you just like fundamentally like him, and like I feel like that's just his superpower for this role or anyone. So yeah, I just he is also just completely watchable, which is that's not like an easy thing to do. Like there are plenty of great actors who you might need to like be sold on them a little bit, but like I don't know anyone who doesn't like Paul Rudd.
Yeah, Paul Rudd, I think, is one of the most likable talents in the industry right now. Even if he's in something really, really bad, he can always find a way of elevating the material. Like, he did that movie Death of a Unicorn last year, which I don't like that movie at all. But I like him, and it's like, well, if Paul Rudd wasn't in this, it probably would have been a lot worse for me. I didn't even watch the Anaconda movie that he just did, but I would have liked to have watched it because it's Paul Rudd, and like, he was so good in Friendship. I think he's really good as Ant-Man. I don't care what people say about the movies. Like, yeah, the movies themselves are not that great and everything, although the first one is very underappreciated in my opinion. He's so good in that role, and he's, been doing great roles for 20 plus years. Like, you go back to the early 2000s and all the comedies that he's done, like The Anchorman and The Role Models, and then of course Wet Hot American Summer, which was very early in his career. He also had a role in Romeo plus Juliet. Like, the dude's been working a lot, but also you think about his first role, which was Clueless, and it's like he's been acting nonstop for many years. And also, since this is objectively, I think, the first time we're really talking about Paul Rudd in this podcast, now I get to bring up this question. How does that guy never age? He's looked the same for the last 30 years. I don't understand that at all. Like, watching this movie, I saw a clip of Clueless the other day on my timeline on Instagram, and I'm just like, he looks the exact same. Like, he looks no different.
I feel like there was something I saw. I don't know if it was in a movie or just a hip appearance or something where I was like, oh, I almost could see like the slightest bit of age creeping in and looking a little different. But then even in this when he's playing just like an everyman character, I'm like, yeah, you still look exactly like you did in 1995 or whatever. Like, yeah, he's crazy.
It's crazy. No wonder why he was the sexiest man alive a few years ago. Just like, what was that, like 3-4 years ago? He got crowned that or something. It was very recent too.
Yeah, which is like, he's just kind of like an everyman. Like, he's never really achieved that like heartthrob status. He's never been, a Brad Pitt or George Clooney or anything. Like, but everybody loves him. He's just
like
handsome and talented,
he could do
great.
anything. I mean, he's done comedy, he's done drama, he's a Marvel superhero. Like, he's done it all, and he continues to put out really, really great work both on film and on television. And I'm a big fan.
I would love for him to get a big, like, awards baity kind of, like, really big role. Like, I don't know, something that I feel like that would just kind of, like, put him on the next level. Because, again, everybody loves him, but...
Well, he is doing Tom McCarthy's next movie, and Tom McCarthy is the guy who made Spotlight. He's doing a drama. It's him and another Paul that I love, Paul Giamatti. So, could that be the role?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I feel like he's kind of missing that. Like, if he was in anything that got like a little bit of Oscar buzz, I feel like everyone would be like so behind that. Like, yeah, let's get Paul Rudd an Oscar, because it's again, everybody loves him, but he's never really had recognition on that level. He's always been seen as more of a fun comedy guy and a little less serious. So yeah, I feel like he's just got everything in his toolbox.
You know what he's really good in? He's really good in Perks of Being a Wallflower as a teacher. He's very good. I rewatched that movie a year ago for my last podcast, and I always forget how, like, that's a really small role and everything, but that's, like, one of his more grounded roles, and I think he's so good at playing that. Like, he has that charm to him and everything, but that's, like, one of the least comedic performances that he's ever done, because then you see him in these comedies where he's very loud and energetic and very hyper, and then you see him in a much more restrained role, and that's how he is for most of this movie and everything, and I really appreciated that. So I was very behind this casting from day one, and I'm really glad that he turned in a really good performance. And as I said, Nick Jonas didn't wow me in the movie, but I was certainly pleased with his performance. And, looking at his filmography, like, I've seen him in a few roles where he's been enjoyable to watch and everything, but, like, nothing beats his work in Camp Rock, just saying.
Iconic. Yeah, I don't have much else to say about him. I think he was good in this. He was, and I always think it's fun when someone is like willing to play a bit of a meta version of themselves, like it's laugh at themselves a little bit. So I just appreciate that about this role for him as well.
Can you think on the top of your head of like performances from musician turned actors that you appreciate that are kind of in the similar vein where it's a little bit meta and everything. Like I brought up Lady Gaga before in The Star Is Born. I feel like that's like an obvious one and everything because that obviously was a very acclaimed performance, got nominated for an Oscar and everything. So
I love that performance. Yeah, and that's almost like a bit of a subversion or something because Lady Gaga appeared as a pop star. Certainly not overnight. Of course, she worked, but she was kind of this like crazy enigma. She was like this doing this really artsy thing, and then like in A Star Is Born, she's kind of like this more down to earth person who then becomes into this pop star. So I absolutely love how that mingled with like her real life story and everything. Other than that, I don't know. I cannot think of another one off the top of my head. But what about you?
I mean, I can't really think of any on top of my head either in terms of like musicians who play musicians in movies. There's obviously a lot of really good musician turned actors. I mean, I think of Cher in Moonstruck, which is obviously not a performance where she's a musician, but that was a very celebrated performance. Won an Oscar. David Bowie, I thought, was a really talented actor. I thought he was so good in like The Man Who Fell to Earth and The Prestige and Labyrinth. Justin Timberlake's a bit of a tough subject to talk about, but he was great in The Social Network, and I stand by that. He was awesome in that. Eminem in the 8 Mile, that's kind of loosely inspired by his life, and he's really good in that. Beyonce in Dreamgirls is another one.
Or in the Pink Panther. Pretty good in that.
Sure.
I remember liking that when I was a kid.
Jennifer Lopez and Selena, of course. I mean, that's like a very popular one and everything. But I can't really think of many. But it was fun seeing her and Nick Jonas in this and everything. Like it was fun seeing him in this, and because like the films that he's done like the new Jumanji movies and like other random movies and everything. So he hasn't done a lot in the film world. But I did just see him on stage recently. So
he's done a lot of that as well too. So that plays into it. But what was your rating for Power Ballad?
So my rating is a 3.5 out of 5. Again, like I wanted to walk out of this movie a lot higher on it because of how much I love John Carney. But this is a solid entry in his filmography. It's nowhere near as good as some of the other films that he's put out. But again, it's a worthy entry. It does what it needs to do. It tugs at the heartstrings. It has good music. It has charming performances and an endearing message at the forefront. So 3.5 out of 5 for me. What was your rating?
I'm also at a 3.5, which, maybe as I explore more of John Carney's filmography, I could definitely understand how this one is just kind of one more example of the formula, and maybe other ones do a better version of it. So maybe it would fall in my estimation, but for a sort of introduction to him, I was plenty entertained and would definitely like to see more. So 3.5 there.
Sweet.
All right. Well, like we said up top, this film had power ballads, had power struggles, but our next one just literally has the power. So, Bryan, what were your expectations for the new He-Man project, and what did you think of Masters of the Universe?
So, I'll be upfront in saying that I don't really have much history with He-Man or that character or that Masters of the Universe and everything. Like, I went into this film with pretty middling expectations, admittedly. It is important to point out that this comes from Travis Knight, who this is not his only film that he has this year. He has Wildwood coming out later this year. So Travis Knight is obviously primarily in the stop motion animated world with Laika, but he's dabbled with a few live action films. He did the Bumblebee movie a few years ago, which I actually really, really enjoy. I haven't seen it since it came out, but I remember really liking that movie. I really like Kubo and the True Strains, but this is his first film to have come out since those two films and everything. So now we have Masters of the Universe, and I went into it just hoping for an entertaining time. Like, it looked very silly, like it was going to embrace what it is and everything. Kind of falling in line with, like, something like Barbie, where we have these characters that are coming from this very goofy world, and then they're in the real world, and they have to immerse themselves, kind of like a fish out of water storyline and everything. And I like the cast. I like Nicholas. We just reviewed the movie with him a few weeks ago. He was in The Sheep Detectives. Very versatile, eclectic actor so far. And even though he's super young in his career and everything, I really like the array of work that he's done with, like, Bottoms and Red, White, and Royal Blue and The Idea of You. So and Camila Mendes is in this, and I love her very much. I don't care about Riverdale at all, but I'm biased because I met Camilla and she's like the sweetest human being ever. But then Idris Elba is in this, and that's one of my guys. Like anytime he's in anything, I will be seeing no matter what. So I went into the film hoping for an entertainment time, and it was fun, but it wasn't anything special in my opinion. I had really wanted this movie to further embrace what it was trying to do, but it just didn't say a ton about what it was trying to convey. And I think that this movie starts off very promising as like the perfect rom of self-aware corniness, and the opener kind of promised this very cheesy, lovable adventure, and we certainly get that. This movie does embrace that, but as soon as we're thrust into the action, like the big plot of it all, you could definitely see the changes that are made with the thematicness of it and the visuals of it, and I just didn't really connect with that at all. And I also thought that the movie was so incredibly long. It felt long. It was a bit of a chore to get through for me, but I do think that the performances were solid, not special. Visually, it had some cool moments throughout. It reminded me a lot of something that I probably would have enjoyed when I was a kid, but watching this as a 28-year-old man, it really didn't do a ton for me. The biggest surprise of this movie, though, for me, is the fact that the best performance of this movie comes from Jared Leto. Like, what the fuck? Genuinely, what the heck? Now, granted, we don't see his face, which is obviously a humongous bonus and everything, and they definitely do something to enhance his voice as Skeletor. But genuinely, the performance actually put a smile on my face. I was like, oh my God, this is actually a really good performance. Like, where did this come from? He really embraced the goofiness. Like, he embraced what the tone of the movie was, which I really commend about the performance. And I feel like everyone else was acting in a different movie, and I didn't really like that. I thought the meshing of tones was a little all over the place for me, but overall, it was fine. It had some moments that I enjoyed and everything, and I watched it with an audience who clearly is such fans of this universe and everything, and I'm just like, wow, I feel so left out. Like, I have no idea why you guys are hooting and hollering. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I feel out of place. But, yeah, it was fine. It was entertaining. It was a nice way to spend the evening, but overall, like, probably not going to remember this in a couple of days. Like, it was fine. I had a good time, but I expected a lot more from it because I felt like a lot of people before going into the movie were saying, oh, it was so good. It was really good. One of the biggest surprises. And I didn't really feel that way personally, but hey, good for you if you felt that way. So, Veronica, how did you feel about Masters of the Universe going in? Did you have a relationship to the material, and how did you feel about the movie coming out?
Very similar to you. Absolutely no relationship to. I know the name He-Man, but like that's pretty much. I know Skeletor from the memes mostly, but like that's literally it. So yeah, no relation to it. When I heard that the movie was coming out, I was like, happy for you guys who care. Like it just wasn't anything that I was all that interested in. But you know, it got closer, and I was like, it seems like it's this big budget, attempt at another sort of franchise thing, and I was like, it's probably gonna, be much like the other, Marvel, DC-esque, the bad entries of that, the sort of slop that is just kind of feels like it's meant to play on nostalgia and get a franchise going and stuff. So just hearing it on paper, I was like, not interested at all. There were definitely some reactions coming out of early screenings and stuff being like, yeah, it's surprising. And so I was like, okay, I, had that in the back of my head, like, all right, this is maybe not a total, waste or anything. And I was definitely open to go either way. But I think it kind of pleasantly surprised me. I would compare it probably to how I felt about Mandalorian, and the fact that like I didn't have any relationship with that specific story within Star Wars, and so I kind of had no expectations, and so any fun that I had was like a welcome bonus. Because yeah, that was pretty much my attitude for this. You mentioned Barbie. It definitely we get that sort of mystical creature thing, mystical person being in our real world for a little bit. So that's always gonna play for a lot of laughs and stuff. But I think overall it reminded me. It's very much in the tone of like a Thor Ragnarok or something,
Yeah.
and which. I love that movie. I do think that, this is like a decade later, pretty much. So it's it's not giving us anything we haven't seen before. And it reminded me a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons movie from 2023, I think that was with Chris Pine, and I love that movie. I think that this one is not as good as that. It's not quite as funny or clever or anything, and that one is written by the people who did Game Night, which is a modern comedy masterpiece, so it's hard to top that. But this one had its moments. Like, I think it had its moments of action, of comedy. I have liked Nicholas Galitzine. I have liked him in other things, but I kind of feel like this was the first time that I was like, oh, he could be a movie star. Like, I really like him in Bottoms, obviously, but that is like so goofy and heightened that it kind of doesn't really translate well to anything else. But like, he takes a little bit of that and he like kind of meshes it with like a traditional, leading man kind of thing here, and I was like pretty impressed by that. I kind of feel like he's not saying he's as good as him or anything, but I kind of feel like he was playing a little bit in the like Ryan Gosling sort of oeuvre, like that kind of thing where he's like can be very goofy and willing to laugh at himself, but it's also like he's a handsome, capable guy like we can all want to root for, and has that like traditional movie star thing going. So I was like, I feel like this is the first time I was like super impressed by him. Like, I think he was kind of a perfect match for this role, which again I have absolutely no prior history with, so take that with a grain of salt. But I enjoyed him, and you called out Jared Leto. Yeah, that was literally, I was like, he tried so hard with the Joker to make that like laugh, that like sinister laugh really stick, and I was like, he did not nail it at all in a Suicide Squad, but he did kind of nail it here. I thought he was sounded super like Shakespearean with all of his readings, and yeah, I thought that was fabulous. Camila Mendes, I like, even though I haven't seen her in a ton. Idris Elba also is one of my guys, and he gets a kind of fun role here. So yeah, I think cast wise, I was like, again, kind of pleasantly surprised. I didn't really know what to expect out of this, and definitely agree with you on the length. It kind of felt like, once you realize that, okay, they're kind of being really like tongue-in-cheek with this, and it's all a bit, it's all a bit silly, I kind of feel like then you need to make it shorter, or you need to like actually take the epicness of it seriously, and then you could justify the runtime. So watching it be like, this is primarily a comedy. It's not really like, it's an action comedy, yes, but like I think it's comedy first and foremost, and it's kind of hard to maintain that momentum with like a almost 2.5 hour movie. So yeah, that definitely strained on my experience a little bit. And then I also had a similar experience to you where I think we both saw like preview screenings that were like billed as fan events, and for sure people in my theater knew He-Man, knew some of the lore and the references and stuff, and you might have felt left out, but I was like, this is funny, like this is like I'm getting like, okay, I don't recognize exactly what the name of that store means, but like it's so fun that fans are here enjoying it. And
honestly, my audience I saw the movie last night, like honestly, like this was one of the instances where they were pretty respectful throughout a majority of the movie and everything. Yeah. And when they cheered, like, it wasn't like to the point where it was annoying, like say a Five Nights at Freddy, where like, granted, that audience was like 12-year-old kids and everything. This was like people our age and above, so it was a little different and everything. So that True. I was able to tolerate, but I was still like, oh, I feel left out. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, this is fun, but like, I want to be a part of the fun too.
I was like, that's none of my business, and I'm happy for you guys. I'm not going to learn about all this
there was going to be like a big audience. I'm like, I didn't realize there was a lot of He-Man fans in 2026.
No, there was. Yeah, I tried to get a ticket to a like 7:00 show, and it was nearly sold out. So I saw it at like 10:30, and there was still like the theater was nearly full. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know box office wise and everything if this is gonna go up against, like we were talking about. It's a pretty busy, good time at the movies. So I don't really know how this could perform. But yeah, for me, a pleasant surprise. I don't have like too much analysis beyond that. Like, we can definitely get into it and stuff we liked and stuff we didn't. But yeah, I think overall, just I had basically zero expectations, and this was like fun enough.
Yeah, so let's get into spoilers. Let's break stuff down and everything. We're not going to break down every single plot element and everything, but we'll start off with the way that this film opens up and everything. We open up on the planet of Eternia, which is where our main character, Adam, as he's called, and everything, are just being trained for the battles and everything by we have the chief of the Royal Guard, who's Duncan, who's Idris Elba's character and everything. And we see this friendship between Adam and Tila, who later goes on to be Camila Mendez's character. She's the daughter of Duncan. And we see that Adam, like in a lot of these movies, like he comes from a family of power. His father is the king and his mother is the queen and everything, but he's, kind of a scaredy cat. He's afraid of getting into fights and everything. He's not strong-minded. He's not brave. He's not courageous and everything. But he has a really good heart, which is, again, a trope that we see in a lot of stories like this and everything, to where we want to be rooting for the person, but then the people around him, we have people who do see him for the good that he is, but then other people are like, no, you need to be tougher, you need to be stronger, you need to be braver and everything. And I'm like, oh, so we're going to have a movie that tackles like toxic masculinity. Wonderful, great. Well, no, we really don't address that at all, which is, I was expecting one thing, we didn't get that. So we get this introduction set piece of introducing us to these characters, and then this whole crazy battle happens and everything. The city is attacked by Skeletor and his ragtag team of people. And I didn't really pay attention to any of the marketing going into the movie or anything. So there were certain actors that when they appeared on screen, I was like, oh, they're in this? I completely forgot. So when Alison Brie came on screen, I was like, I had no idea that she was in this movie.
Same here.
Like I had seen the trailer when it came out so many months ago, but I don't recall if she was really in any of the marketing. Like, I remember Nicholas, Galitzine, and Camila Mendez, and Idris Elba, and the Jared Leto of it all, even though, again, we don't see his face. So we get this ginormous action set piece where distress is happening, people are going their separate ways, people are leaving behind people, and then all this chaos ensues, and then Adam escapes with this sword of power, and he's told that he has the power of Great Skull and everything, and that he can never let it go and everything. So we see him escape. And before we get into all of that, what was your take on this introduction? Because it's like, this is pretty expected for a movie like this and everything. It didn't really break ground with what it was trying to do, but how did you feel about this introduction?
Yeah, once again, I'm not at all familiar with the source material, so I'm sure this probably exists in some capacity somewhere already. But I was like, this is literally just Dune. Like, this is like, getting attacked and the prince escaping and going into exile. That's which is like, it's a tale as old as time. So
yeah, the whole training between Adam and Duncan reminded
someone
me a
named
lot
Duncan.
of Paul and Gurney.
Yeah, like you literally have a character named Duncan in Dune as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, this is okay. This is fantasy sci-fi hero stuff 101. So I was like, that's fine. Again, going in with no expectations and just being like, yeah, just let's have fun. So starting off with something that's just pretty basic and fun. I think the action looked fine. The different like sort of weird characters, again, I'm sure they all have a ton of lore behind them, but like I am not familiar with any of it, and they all looked pretty unique and had different sort of fighting styles, and I was like, okay, it was impressive enough. And then the thing that I think really won me over was we get this entire attack action sequence. Adam escapes, immediately drops the sword and is separated from it, and then the kind of like smash cut to now the older Nicholas Galitzine being on a date telling a girl this story as like his background. I was like, oh, okay, like that was where I kind of like locked into like, okay, this movie is gonna be very tongue-in-cheek and pretty silly with it. And I was like, I would prefer that than something that's gonna be like super self-serious and all that. So yeah, the hard cut to his date and then learning about his like office job, and he's kind of got this unfulfilling life, and he's just dreaming about finding his sword and getting back to his kingdom. I was like, it's a fun take on it.
Yeah, I like the tongue-in-cheekness that this movie set itself up with, and that's what I thought the tone would be throughout the movie, and it was to a degree, but I feel like it didn't fully live up to that because it started off so promising and everything. Again, I didn't know what direction they were going to go in with the movie and everything. Like, I saw the trailer many months ago, and I had an idea that it was going to go for that, self-referential, like, type of jab and everything, kind of like Barbie and everything. Like, I thought of Barbie in that regard, but obviously you're not going to be able to match the genius of that movie and everything because, you don't have Greta Gerwig writing and directing your movie. No offense to Travis Knight, but like, when you have Greta Gerwig, you're destined for greatness. But okay. I like the way that we did jump into him as an adult and everything. So I'm a big fan of Sashir Samada. Like I
She was
love
Amita,
her.
yeah.
She was a highlight for me when she was on SNL. Like I was a huge SNL guy, like back in the day when I was in high school and everything, and I loved her on that show so much. When she left, I was really devastated, and I haven't really seen her in many projects since SNL. I know she was on that Agatha MCU show and everything,
She was really
I
good in that too, yeah.
I didn't watch that despite the fact that Mother is literally headlining that show and everything. So when I saw her in this, I was like,
If
oh,
you
this
want
is
to
such
miss
a
out on lesbian tension between Catherine Hahn and Aubrey Plaza, that's on you. But I was there. It was
I
very
was
good.
I was worn out by the MCU. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but that's
fair
a different
enough.
discussion for another time. But I loved seeing her in this. I loved seeing her in this, and then very brief character. His roommate was so fucking funny. Him watching The Notebook and crying. He's like, "Hey, bro, what up? Yeah, bro." Like, you're just crying about The Notebook 5 seconds ago, and I'm like, see, back in the day, that was me trying to like hide the fact that I liked certain things like that from my friends. I'd be like, "Oh, hey man, what up?" So I liked that little segment and everything. But yeah, we
Yeah.
see him in this home life and everything, and he's just so hungry to find the sort of power to get back to his family and everything. And I love the sequence of when he tracks down the sword and everything because
Hmm.
he gets this text saying you'll get $300 for the sword and everything. So he finds it at this comic book store downtown. And I love the way that this sequence plays out and everything because he grabs it from this statue and everything. The statue falls on him and then he just runs away with the sword. And I like how everyone is so concerned for him, including one of the comic book store employees. And then as soon as he leaves, she's like, "Are you single?"
Oh, he's like awkwardly wrestling, like he's like getting pinned by this statue. Yeah, and it's like, he's crazy, but he's kind of cute. Like, are you single?
And then more action comes about, and this is where the movie kicks into high gear.
Yeah, we get this. So, this I kind of also like too because it's a very movie thing for just someone steals something from a store and runs off and like that's it. And it was like, no, the next day the cops show up at his door because like he stole a sword very publicly in a store. So I just thought that was like a kind of a cute touch. And yeah, he's getting taken away by the police for this robbery. And then yeah, this is when the fantasy in action kicks in. I don't really understand. I guess something about him holding the sword has now activated it, and they were able to track it down. And so we get this giant beast creature who causes a traffic jam on the road and is trying to break into the cop car to get the sword. So Adam is freed and he's running around, and then we have Tila. Is it Tila shows up to defend him and protect him, and they sort of have a very quick reunion. And yeah, quickly she's got him on her ship heading back to their kingdom. And yeah, there's cute needle drops in this scene, which again I think they're almost like they're so on the nose that they're kind of being like a little silly with it. Like a car pulls up playing "I Got the Power" and stuff, and then the monster attack starts and he says like what's going on, and then what's going on starts. Like it's very cheeky about everything and has a sense of humor. But yeah, I think that it was again, the action sequence are like decent, and it's enough to just kind of like keep the story moving forward. And I was glad that wasn't like a whole played out thing of like, okay, we need to like get to this to be able to get back here and get that. It's like, no, they just like hop on our ship and then like they're back in their world. So yeah, that all worked for me pretty well.
I think that the movie was at its strongest, personally, like this opening segment, because when they went back to the planet and everything, and we see how there's a lot of ruin to the city, and it's devastating for Adam because that's obviously not how he remembered the city to be and everything. So he just wants to find balance and like make sure that he could get the planet back to the way it is, but also more importantly, he wants to find his parents. Like that's the main goal for him, is to find his family. So when he arrives on this planet, this is where we get pretty much the fish out of water element. It did remind me, like, you brought up Thor Ragnarok, and that's absolutely a valid comparison to this movie. Like, the same kind of tongue-in-cheek tone, the very overly silly visual effects, something that's very akin to something that would have come out in, like, the 80s or the 90s. And they did make a Masters of the Universe movie back in the 80s with Dolph Lundgren, who has a cameo early in the movie, which I had forgotten that he was in the original, so when he came on screen, I was like, "What the fuck is he doing here?" And then it was a very lovely little moment and everything. So I liked
Again,
that.
from my crowd reaction, I was like, oh, okay, so that was previous He-Man.
Yeah, I it took me a second to recollect the fact that he previously played the role, but I'm like, you know what? Good on him. Like he's been through a lot in his life, so I'm glad to see him get an opportunity to have a little cameo in a project that clearly was very special to him back in the day. But so anyway, when we're back on the planet, like he's trying to talk to all these people and they're all like, who the fuck is this guy? What the hell is his deal? And then they're all confused. And this is where the comedy starts to kind of come into play, something that we would see in these fish out of water stories and everything. And it makes for good comedy. But then I admittedly thought that after a while it was starting to wear a little thin because it's like, okay, many more times can you make the same joke and everything? It
Yeah.
just kept going and going and going. But initially it was very funny, and there were certainly moments throughout the movie where it did stick the landing. But then there were other times where I'm like rolling my eyes, I'm just shrugging a little bit, and I'm just like, okay, like So when we got back to
Yeah.
this planet, I was still invested, but this is where it started to fizzle a little bit for me because I liked the whole fish out of water element to it, but I didn't think that they pat the punch with it like I had wanted them to.
Yeah, I agree. Like after the initial reactions of like, oh, okay, now no one here really remembers him that well or is convinced that he's the prince coming back, and it was like I think it improved once they got thrown in that dungeon and we get the introduction of the Roboto, voiced by Kristen Wiig, and the revelation that Idris Elba's character is alive. It was sort of, he was possibly taken out at the beginning attack sequence, but he's here and he is like a drunk who has his failure on that day of the attack has sort of like undone him as a person and as a fighter and everything. And I mean, again, looking back, obviously we didn't see him die in the beginning, so I was like not at all surprised that he was still alive and part of the story. But I actually thought this was a pretty cool, when we first saw Idris Elba, I was like, Idris Elba playing the tough, wizened, fighter guy who's like, tough but fair and everything. I was like, that's like, a Tuesday for him. Like he could do that in his sleep. And so I was kind of just like, yeah, he's always great, but yeah, this is like an Idris Elba part. And then I was kind of like happy about the subversion of him playing this like comic relief drunk guy who's like such a fuck up. And I think a lot of the comedy I enjoyed came from him, because again, he's just such a skilled actor. I don't feel like we get to see him in this mode a lot, and I thought that was like a really welcome surprise.
Yeah, the most comedic that he's probably ever been was when he was in Cats a few years ago. That's probably the most that he's like
Block that
really
out.
gone out, swung for the fences and everything. But no, he's always a great presence, and it's so funny too that when I was watching this last night, like I leaned over to my friend who I saw it with, and I was just like, "Do you remember of how he walked past us when we were online to go to the bathroom?" We saw House of Dynamite at the New York Film Festival last year, and we were online to go to the bathroom. Then all of a sudden, oh hey, it's him and Rebecca Ferguson walking like literally next to me, and I'm like,
Oh my God, the beauty just overwhelmed you.
yeah, like two of the most perfect people I've ever seen in my entire life. Oh my God.
I've been obsessed with Idris since The Wire. I think he is so brilliant. Again, kind of when we were talking about Paul Rudd, I feel like we need him in like a really big high profile project where everyone could be like, that's right, Idris Elba, we all love him. Let's like get him an Oscar.
He got significant awards buzz a few years ago for that Beast of No Nation movie, but he didn't
Yeah, that
get
was a while
nominated for an
ago, yeah.
Oscar because at the time they weren't accepting Netflix movies and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is disappointing because he got nominated everywhere, and I think he won like 2 major prizes and everything. So, if he had been nominated, he maybe could have won an Oscar, which would have been fine by me. He would have been Mark Rylance for Bridge of Spies, but hey, give or take, whatever. But no, I agree. I think a lot of my favorite comedy came from him as well because we don't really see him do comedy that much. Like he's done comedy before and everything, and I do think that when he does comedy, he is pretty funny, but he tends to play more of a straight man than like the comic relief. And not that he was very goofy and zany or anything, but he had a lot of comedic charm to him in this, and I really liked that about his work in this movie because it's like, no, give him more comedy because when he's given comedy, he could really knock it out of the park. We love seeing him play a badass like on The Wire or like the very heroic figure like in Pacific Rim, where he was
yeah.
like very badass in that, but then also a slimy villain in Hobbs and Shaw. But then he did this, and it's like, oh, it's a really fun entry in his catalog for sure. So Yeah, I agree with you on regarding that.
Yeah, yeah, it was good to see. He was very funny as the police chief in Zootopia, but
That's
that's
right.
a voice performance.
Yeah, and I liked
But
his little stint on The Office, but again, straight man territory.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't from here. It's like the adventure begins. There's like action stuff. We get this scene of obviously they Skeletor attacks again. All of the logistics of how Skeletor, when he can and can't find them, is just like completely hand waved away. Like that is like I don't think they're even trying to really take any of that seriously. And I don't know, for someone who like genuinely cares about this material and is like aware of it, I could definitely see that being a bit of a sticking point. Like, that there's no sense of like larger story or like stakes and stuff. Like that's like you're really not coming here for that. It's just gonna kind of be like we're gonna set up some comedy, we're gonna set up some action, you're gonna have fun. So your mileage may vary on that, but for me, I was certainly happy to not get bogged down in like the mechanics of how we got to get here and get there. So I was just along for the ride, and so Adam gets the sword back. He does his little He-Man thing, and sends lasers up to the sky, and now he is transformed. His muscles have grown. He's got his loincloth on, and he has the power. So he's got the power. I don't know, but then he's like an awesome good fighter, and he can kind of take out most of the henchmen. I don't know. There's a lot of escaping. There's a lot of fly. I think the flying sequences were pretty good. It's effects stuff may vary a little bit in how realistic everything looks, but I didn't think it got too CGI slop looking. I could understand where everything was in relation to each other. There's different kinds of ships. Again, I kind of like the variety here of like the different sorts of people that they're fighting, different kinds of ships, and it's the kind of world where it's like they're literally just throwing everything at the wall. Like I think that's from what I understand of He-Man, like that's how it exists. Like it's a little bit of Star Wars, it's a little bit of something more medieval. It's it's Dune. It's like all of this stuff put together. So I like that they played with that. They didn't try to just like sand down the edges and make it look like one coherent thing. There's some of the effects, like some of the creatures and characters are CGI. Some of them look more like costumes or I don't know if there's any puppet work or anything, but they looked a little more practical. So I like that. And that also reminded me of Dungeons and Dragons, which also kind of took that approach. So like that kind of stuff, it worked for me. It felt a little more tangible and tactile than you normally get in a big fantasy blockbuster.
Yeah, I agree. And then after all this is happening, Skeletor comes into play a lot more and everything. He becomes so obsessed with the sword, and he really just wants to claim the throne. As we learn early on in the movie, like, this sword has so much power, like the kind of power that anyone would yearn for. And because of that, he is just so hungry for it that he's willing to do anything just to get this sword. So we enter his fortress and everything, his lair, as they want to call it, and we see Adam defeating Skeletor's personal guard and everything, but then Skeletor reveals that Adam's father, King Randor, is hostage and everything, and we see this brief fight between the two of them, and then this strike happens that causes the ceiling to fall on top of the father and everything, and we get this heartfelt moment where Adam's like, I just wanted to make you proud of me. And the King's just like, I was always proud of you. Even though when we were introduced to him, we made it seem like that the
we
father...
didn't see any of that.
Yeah, we didn't see any of that at all. So it's like, what do you mean you're proud of him? Like, you didn't show that an hour and a half ago when we were introduced to you. So I have no idea what you're talking about, buddy. And especially because you've been held hostage for the entire time, probably since Adam escaped and everything. It's been 15 years. It's like, how do you know that you're proud of him? But whatever. Anyway, it's this emotional moment. It sets off a catharsis for Adam and everything. And he loses the battle. He is knocked out. The sound of him getting knocked out in the cut, like, it was like, you could tell obviously he was fake and everything, but it looked like you kind of felt the punch to his head of when he got knocked out and everything. And he returns back to the state, like, where he's, wearing the human clothes and everything. And he then gives this huge speech being like, all right, everybody, we have to work together to get back what we want and to defeat Skeletor. The typical thing that we see in movies like this and everything.
He gives a war seminar, as
a war seminar,
Idris's character
yes.
called it.
Yes, a war seminar. Never thought in my life I would see anything like that. So kudos to this and everything. But yeah, he manages to get everyone on his wavelength, and then they do this escape, and it makes for a really fun sequence. But I want to talk briefly about when Skeletor has the sword and everything. He's trying to use he's trying to do the call and everything. He's like, did I say it right? Like, it makes for a really good comment. Like, I can't stress enough how, like, surprisingly great Leto was in this role and everything. Like,
yeah, he really is.
I don't know what he did. I don't know if he did anything different with his voice. I actually would be really curious if he like did something with his voice to where they didn't have to like add any filters or anything, but like I don't know, like even through like the voice filter, it's just like you could tell that he's added this very wacko maniacal energy. So he's pretty much just bringing himself to the role, which makes sense why he would play a character like this. But I don't know, there's just these sequences where he just says something and it's funny and like it works because it's so silly and goofy and it embraces it and it's not taking itself seriously, because I feel like if someone else were behind this, they would have tried to make Skeletor this very like brooding, serious villain. And yeah, he's terrifying because he's literally a skull. That's what he is. He's terrifying to look at, but he's also a dumbass and it's great.
Yeah, he really nails it with the like weird like snarls and breathing between lines and stuff too. Like that's that's obviously it's modulated or like enhanced in some way, but like I think that's all in the performance. So yeah, it plays really, and he and Alison Brie play off each other well. Like they've got that like toxic sort of slate romance thing going on, and like she's just like devoted to him, and so yeah, it's the way that he is scary to all of his underlings, but also they all kind of laugh at him too. So yeah, it's just it's typical stuff, but it's just really well done from him. He's got that really like he's got some gravitas in this, and he is not always the best at voices because we have seen House of Gucci, so it's not his accent work isn't always top notch.
You don't like that SAG nominated performance in House of Gucci? Was he nominated for? He was nominated for something. I remember that year.
Globe or something. Yeah, I don't know. At least it didn't make it to Oscar.
Why, cousin? Why, cousin? That's all I remember from that movie, and the sequence where he screams and then the car horn is underneath. That's all I remember from that movie.
That's all I remember. Yeah,
that movie was something. That was an experience that I'll never forget. Speaking of Lady Gaga from earlier on,
yep.
that was oh man, what a film. Not Adam Driver's finest hour, but anyway, back to this movie. So we get this action set piece, we get into the third act, and it's this huge action spectacle where everybody's defeating everybody. Then we get the climactic battle between Adam and Skeletor and everything. So how did you feel about this entire third act essentially being, the action set piece, which we all expected that to be what this was going to, like, we all expected that this was how the third act was going to play out and everything, but how did you feel about the way it was handled?
Yeah, I mean, it does go exactly the way that you would figure, and we know we get this revelation with the bird figure, the sorceress, who has kind of been his, fairy godmother a bit on the way, and so, all of that is again, plays out like you would think. The thing that I do like about it is that, as a moment when Skeletor is sort of dominating Adam and like seeming like he's gonna win, he has that moment of being like Adam kind of tries to talk him down and say like, hey, can we talk about this, and that's seeded throughout too, that Adam in his day job back on Earth, it's very vague, he like works for an HR thing, the whole company's HR or something. Yeah. But like,
which,
so
how
very
did he get
much
that job? I want to know how he got that.
I mean, he just showed up on Earth one day as a 10-year-old, so like, assumingly that someone put him in school or something. So, I guess he could be pretty normal from there. But, like that's been a whole thing that he's obviously he started off this very like meek kind of child, and then he's grown into, I think it does kind of deal a little bit with toxic masculinity. Like it's not going for anything deep or anything, but just the idea that he is someone who wants to like talk about his feelings and work through conflict rather than fight about it, and so he tries to exercise a little bit of that on Skeletor. And I kind of like the moment that Skeletor is like, you can't like talk me through this or like understand my backstory or anything. Like I am a villain, and again, as someone who is like not familiar with the material, I kind of appreciate the like dispensing of the lore and the tortured backstory for the villain. Like I kind of like that he's someone who just says like my face is a skull. I'm gonna be the villain, so let me go ahead and do that now. And then they do, like then it plays out just as you would figure. So yeah, I kind of again I think that a movie that's gonna take that approach and like sort of tell you up front that we're not taking any of this too seriously and you probably shouldn't either. If you're gonna do that, I think it needs to be a little shorter. It needs to be a little less bloated. Like it's not gonna have that epic feeling, so it doesn't really sustain itself all that well. But this is a moment where I'm glad they went this route than trying to, give us a 10-minute backstory on Skeletor.
Yeah. I completely agree. And then the final battle, it's really fun to see. I like the way it was shot and everything with like the slow-mo and the fast-mo. It reminded me of Zack Snyder's style, which I'm not usually a fan of, admittedly, but I kind of liked how it worked here because, again, this movie is so absurd and so ridiculous and very campy. So it fits the vibe of this. Meanwhile, in like Rebel Moon, I don't know if you saw the Rebel Moon movies. They're pretty bad. But there's like a sequence in one of them where someone is like running like to jump over to the other side of like a mountain, and it's like slow-mo, then it like pans around, and then it like pans around again, and I'm like, what? This doesn't work for this. Like it works in 300, but it doesn't work here. So like cut it.
And I'm gonna take a leap and say that those movies take themselves very seriously.
Yes.
as per Zack Snyder. Yeah, it doesn't really work when you're trying to do that.
Exactly. Those movies don't go in a campy direction at all. And I'm not saying that every movie that has a format like this has to be campy. You could make a really good movie if you're trying to follow a serious route, but let's be honest, when you watch a movie like Masters of the Universe, you have to suspend your disbelief, and this movie knows that, even if it doesn't entirely stick the landing for me, to where it does feel like a movie that might feel a little dated, to where this kind of tone and humor doesn't exactly mesh well in 2026. And also, I think the screenplay just needed some layers added to it to where it could have worked and everything. But like you brought up before, the whole Thor Ragnarok comparison, like I kept thinking about that in the back of my head. And that movie only came out 10 years ago. And you could say like, oh, this movie feels dated and everything. But like that worked very, very well. Like the way that screenplay was structured with its comedy and silliness and everything, it really worked very well for that movie. And also it was different too, because that was in the MCU and it was a different vibe. This kind of feels like a love child of like that and the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, where it's this galactic space adventure, action set pieces, comedy sprinkled throughout, a ragtag group of people. But I ultimately felt a little at a distance with it, and it had nothing to do with the fact that I'm not well versed with the material and everything, because like with these Marvel movies, like I don't know anything about these characters before I watch the movie, and most of the time it works and other times it doesn't. But just like going back to a more cohesive discussion on my part with the way that this movie wraps up, I really like the fight between Skeletor and Adam. I think it makes for a really fun set piece and everything, and I don't really have a ton to add to it and everything, but I really like the way it all comes together.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. Like, it reminds me a lot of those other movies we've mentioned. It's like not as good as any of them and kind of feels a little derivative of them. So like, I can definitely understand if someone sees this and just thinks, this is diet Thor Ragnarok, but judging it on its own, like I think that it's a decent enough showing. And yeah, I think the only other thing is that I kind of like the like production design of it. Again, you've got big CGI stuff going on. Like not all of that stuff looks great, but like in terms of the sets and the world that's created, I think it's pretty good. Again, not too familiar with it or anything, but and it just kind of it nails that thing that I was saying, that it's kind of like an amalgamation of just like sci-fi fantasy storytelling. It's like a little bit of everything, and it's very busy. It's like a little overwhelming, but I think that's the intention. And then I also think that the music plays into that a lot, and I feel like that the music really sticks in the sort of like 80s tone of it. Like it feels very much like I think it's playing into some of the nostalgia of I think it was around 80s or so when He-Man was really big and at its height and stuff, and so I feel like it doesn't try to be a modern updating of it, or put it into like it keeps a little bit of that like kitschiness, which I think is smart with when you're going for this kind of tone.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's like that very like synthy heavy music, which is like so 80s.
Yeah, and the movie was composed by Daniel Pemberton, who just did the score
Yeah.
for Project Hail Mary and the Spider Verse movies, and
Hmm.
he's done a handful of other projects. It's so weird when you look at the eclecticness of his work. He composed like Steve Jobs and the Trial of the Chicago Seven and Spider Verse and Project Hail Mary, and now he's doing this. And I like range in a composer. I like when a composer tries to dabble in different projects, like Ludwig Göransson. The fact that he could do something like New Girl, and then something like all the Ryan Coogler collaborations, like Sinners, and then obviously what he's done with Christopher Nolan. It's like range.
And just did Mandalorian, right?
He just did Mandalorian
Hmm.
as well. But you never would have pictured the guy who did music for New Girl would go on to do the fucking Odyssey. Like, it's
Yeah,
crazy to me.
yeah. Composers have to be so diverse, and like there are so many like generationally good talents working these days. Ludwig and Daniel Pemberton and everything. Yeah, it's like there's always, even when you see a movie that's not that great, I feel like the score usually elevates it.
I agree. I agree. And then, the movie wraps up on this nice little bow and everything. The planet has been restored to its former glory. The queen is there. Adam is now a hero. Roboto has been refurbished. And then the roommate happens to be there, which was really, really funny. Thank you for bringing me here just to show that you weren't lying about what you were telling me this whole time and everything, blah, blah, blah. And, and then we get the okay. So this moment, like, it was cute, but it kind of made me roll my eyes a little bit. Where so throughout the movie, when Adam got back to the planet, he was given various names to all these people that are on the planet because he didn't remember what their names were originally and everything. So he had really fun names for every single one, including like Tila and Duncan and everything. So Tila's like, did you ever give yourself a name? And he's like, yeah, it's stupid, but I'll say it anyway, He-Man. It reminded me so much of that stupid scene at the end of the shitty Fantastic Four movie where they're like, oh, it's fantastic. Say that again. It's fantastic. It's like, oh, God. Like, I understand what they're going for, but please don't do that. I'm just like, oh, here we go, blah, blah, blah. But,
It's very on the nose.
yeah, and I'm like, for a movie that's pretty much trying to be on the nose the whole time, I understand it, but it just like I'm like, okay, come on.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I felt the same way about it. And then did any of the stingers or post credit thing? Did any of that mean anything to you? Because it
No,
didn't for me, but it
it
did to
didn't
my
mean
audience.
anything but my audience ate it up.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. Obviously, there's a new character being introduced at the end there. So again, happy for all of you, but I'm
Yeah,
not gonna.
like it's completely happy for everybody, but yeah, it didn't do anything for me. That doesn't mean it was bad. It's just like
Yeah.
I don't have an attachment to it. So are there any things that you want to talk about before we give our reins, like the performances? We haven't really addressed what we thought of the performances and everything. So would you like to take it away with your take on this ensemble?
No, yeah, I think we covered Nick and Jared Leto and Idris Elba and everything. Yeah, Camila Mendes, like I said, I'm not super familiar with her. I never watched Riverdale, but I thought she had a couple of good moments here. The like I think when they're flying back into the kingdom, again, sort of what I'm going on with dispensing of any of the like larger, grander theories or anything, just kind of setting up heroes and villains. He says like, why is Skeletor doing all this? Like, why does he want this? And she's like, he's bad. And like the audience kind of laughed at that, like it was unintentional. But then he's like, yeah, I guess. And she's like, he has a skull for a face. Like it's it's very aware of what it's doing there. And she has that moment with her ship where the ship says like the hull is breached, and she's like, run analytics, and the ship is like, running analytics, hull is breached. There were just like cute moments like that that I think that she played really well, and she plays off of Idris Elba as her dad really well. So I enjoyed her. I always love Alison Brie, and yeah, like you, I was surprised when she showed up. I did not know she was in this, and she gets to really camp it up. So that was exciting. Yeah, and that was the other ones we talked about earlier. I was really impressed by Nicholas G in this, and I think that I think he's going to be a big enough movie star that I have to learn how to say his last name, which
So
is
I'm looking up
no
how to
easy
pronounce
feat.
his name right now. It says that according to our friends at Wikipedia,
Galitzine, I think.
Galitzine is how it's spelled written out.
Oh,
So I'm gonna just say Galitzine and everything. I'm sure
Galitzine,
someone's
like
gonna
not zine.
yeah, like Gal it
It's
scene.
scene. Okay.
So that's how it's spelled out. So we're gonna go off that. Um, Yeah, I agree. I think that he has the potential of being like a humongous star and everything. And it is very weird though seeing him in a role like this because like in Bottoms he's like he has muscles and everything, but he's very like slim and everything. And this he's like fucking jacked, and it's just like it reminded me a lot of like seeing Chris Pratt go from the Andy Dwyer physique on Parks and Rec, and then seeing him bulk up as Star Lord. It's like this is very overwhelming for me because like I'm so accustomed to not seeing him like look like this and everything. But
He's a little bit of a beefcake in Bottoms. I mean, he's like a high school kid. Like
yeah,
he's
but
not a superhero.
not
But
like this. Though.
yeah,
This is like
yeah.
really just like to the point where when he runs, it looks like he's running like this and everything. Like his arms are kind of out like The Rock and everything. So I'm just like. Okay, and I understand when you play He-Man, you have to like really, really, really bulk up, but just
Yeah, I don't think he had the option of taking the Robert Pattinson route. Where like, no, I'm just not going to work out. Like, you're playing He-Man, you kind of need to look like the action figure.
yeah, but he did good with the comedy. I thought he did good with the sincerity as well. I thought he really crushed it in this role. Idris Elba was great. I just would have liked a little bit more from Camila Mendes and everything. And I want to bring up a scene that we didn't bring up was the sequence where he was basically admitting feelings, and she's like, "Oh, I see you as a good friend," and I'm like, "Ah, yes, the classic stage again, friend zone."
My audience literally went, "Ooh."
Yeah, same. My friend who sat next to me, it wasn't like a ooh, it was like a like a crit, like a and I'm like, "Oh, been there, my brother." Can relate to you heavily. I just would have liked a bit more with her and everything, because like again. I've only seen maybe the first season of Riverdale and everything, but I've seen her in other projects, and she's very charming. She has a great charm to her, like in real life and everything. And her being in like a big budget blockbuster film, I'm like, oh, she's gonna have a lot to work with. But she did fine in the role. But and Alison Brie, I mean, she really went for the cheese in this. It reminded me so much of what Elizabeth Banks unsuccessfully did in the Power Rangers movie all those years ago, where like it just did not fit the tone of that movie at all and everything. But like this movie was so much more campier than that Power Rangers movie. But Alison Brie like really owned the campiness, and I thought she did such justice to it because she's one of those actors that can do campy really well. I mean, if you've seen what she does on like Community and all these other projects and everything, like she's really great with comedy. She's done really good with drama as well, and yeah, I'm such a fan of her. So seeing her in anything is really, really great. But I genuinely do believe that the MVP of this cast, shockingly, is Jared Leto. I really do think that he gave the strongest performance of this ensemble, which I never thought I would say. Like, yeah, he's given good performances in the past. Like, he's not like an awful actor, but I just don't like him as a person, so I was like dreading the idea of going into this movie and having to be like, oh, I have to watch a movie where Jared Leto is thankfully not the lead, but it's like, oh, how's he gonna do in this? And then the fact that we don't see his face was rewarding enough, but like he really crushed it with the voice work, and you gotta give credit where credit is due. Like he really knocked it out of the park, and everyone else was fine. They did their job. They came in, they had a good time, and then the movie ended. So, yeah, performances were good. Do we think that we're going to get more with these characters? Like, I don't expect this movie to be, like, a huge juggernaut at the box office, but I feel like it's going to have a decent enough following to where Amazon is going to want to greenlight another one of these.
Yeah, I'm so curious. Like we talked about a little bit earlier, but it's a the movie theaters are doing pretty well right now, which is incredible. But I don't know that this might get crowded out for people going to see other things. And so I mean, Amazon, they have the money and the budget to throw another one at this, even if it doesn't perform all that well. But yeah, I mean, I would go see a sequel. It was it was fun enough for me that I would be willing to pick up with these characters again. And I assume that anyone else who is into this universe is probably happy enough with this outing and would like to see another one.
Yeah, but I'd rather get a sequel to the Dungeons and Dragons movie,
Yeah.
personally. If we get a sequel to this and not to that, I know it's a different studio and everything, but I'm actually going to be really pissed off if we get this and not that.
Yeah, that one is just like a better version of this movie,
Oh, it's
essentially.
100% better. Like, that movie knows exactly what it is and embraces what it's supposed to be, but also you have the game night writer-director duo behind it, so naturally, of course, it's
Yep.
better. But it is going to be so interesting watching Wildwood later this year when it comes out, being like, oh yeah, this guy directed the Masters of the Universe movie earlier this year, which was, this movie was obviously a lot sillier and more fun, and the Wildwood trailer played in front of Masters of the Universe. And there were people that were like actively sobbing in the theater. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be quite a downer. So I like the fact that we're going to see two different sides of Travis Knight this year. And I always find it interesting whenever a primarily animated filmmaker steps into the live action foray. And I think both Allens that he's done in live action have been, they've been decent. Like, they haven't been great.
really
I think he
Bumblebees.
excels more in the anime world. But I think so far his two live action albums are thumbs up for me.
Yeah, same as you. I haven't seen Bumblebee I think since it came out, but I really liked it at the time.
Yeah, I like him. It's crazy to me that his father is the guy behind Nike shoes or whatever. His father was in Air, and he was played by Ben Affleck. I was thinking to myself when I was watching Air, I'm like, wow, this character's son is the guy who goes on to make like Kubo and the Shoestrings. Kept thinking of that the whole time. But yeah, fun movie overall. Not as strong as I wanted it to be, admittedly, but I had a fun enough time with it with the group of people I went with. And hopefully people who are fans of this material find this to be a satisfying adaptation of their beloved property.
Yeah, I feel the same way. What was your rating on this one?
I gave it a 3-star. It's not bad. I'm very much in the middle with it, but I would say I liked it, but I didn't like go, oh my MG, I really liked it. But I enjoyed it for what it was. I had a fun enough time. I wanted a bit more oomph from it, but from what we got, it was entertaining enough to where maybe one day I'll go back to it if I have nothing else to watch. But yeah, I had a fun time with it overall. What would you rate it?
It was 3.5 for me, so slightly higher. I think I'm kind of happy that there wasn't more oomph to it. Like I'm glad that they didn't try to take that, big epic approach and went for something that's a little more slight. Like they're not going for anything that's super ambitious.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be more tongue in cheek. It's playing more to the comedy of it. Again, I think that the runtime does not justify what we get. And
they really needed the runtime. That was
if this was like a
the
lean
of the movie.
If this was like a lean 90-minute movie or something, I would be like, this slaps. Like it would be all, the fun moments. And
90 or 100 minutes. Like no more than 100 minutes. Even if it was a little under 2 hours, I would have been fine with that. But like it's like teetering on 2.5 hours. Like that's a long movie.
If you're gonna go that long, you have to like totally change the approach and take the story a little more seriously and actually, have some things make sense and and have a real story behind it. So, I'm fine with this approach. Probably could have edited some out of it, but for something that I had like absolutely no expectations going into, I'm just glad that I could have a fun time.
Absolutely. And with that is a wrap on today's episode of Some Like It Real. Thank you all for joining us. If you're interested in following along our journey, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Brian Setfield.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Vera Albarella and on Letterboxd at Alba_real_A.
And you can follow the show on all socials at Some Like It Real, as well as on YouTube at Some Like It Real. Be sure to subscribe and share it around and tune in every Monday and Thursday for a new episode of Some Like It Real on podcast platforms.
We'll see you next time.